This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, super practical.
I'm not telling people to have a mistress. I'm teaching you, learn the lesson from the people who have a mistress, because there's many business lessons that apply.
Pious.
There's a part in the book of Revelation where Jesus says, I want you either hot or cold. I'm spewing lukewarm churches out. I think it's a good way to look at your list.
Romantic to his very core.
Once in a while, I'll give my girl a present, like a Snickers bar or something.
And totes tender.
If someone asks you to walk on eggshells, smash the eggshells and let the chips fall wherever they may.
Adored by feminists everywhere.
It takes a strong woman to admit when she's wrong.
Not a judgmental bone in his entire body.
I look at all the free information people give just on Facebook and I go, what a bunch of time hose.
Has a PhD in armchair philosophy.
In the land of dumbasses, the smartass is king.
You'll never meet a more sensitive guy.
If you really care about people, you shame the hell out of them. This is Ben Settle of the bensettle.com podcast. Rooney. I like how I did that, Jonathan.
Lovely.
A little change up. So I have an admission to make, and I hate to admit this, but I will admit it in the spirit of authenticity, because, Jonathan, that's what everybody's always whining about, authenticity, right? So Jonathan caught me making a mistake about 3 minutes before recording here. Apparently,
Ben,
I had the
rare mistake. It was like finding a diamond.
Well, that was the thing. I made a mistake. I'm admitting it, but I'm also going to admit something else. It happens so infrequently. It's like statistically, it just never happens. So what you just witnessed with that mistake, Jonathan, is like on a subatomic level, something being born and dying.
Yeah.
Like in the grand scheme of things, it rarely ever happens, but it did happen today, and I am coming clean with it. So
thank you.
That said.
And I'm going to go play the lotto tonight. Thank you so much for that.
And to segue into that, and it's almost like I planned this, but I really didn't, but I can turn mistakes into good things. I can turn mistakes into reasons to buy, for example, or in this case, into good podcasting. Well, at least I will think it's good podcasting. And that is a mistake people make is they don't know how to write content that isn't boring, dull, and dry. So after this show, you will never make that mistake again. Jonathan, yes, I am going to finally dispel all the horse crap that people talk about when they talk about content writing. And there's much of it out there. And people make it a much more difficult thing than it needs to be. As much as I would like to brag and like pound my chest about how much content I put out, because I do, it's not because I have any special talent. Writing is not in my blood. As some people are, I saw someone claim once, Jonathan, someone literally claimed in their email that writing is in my blood. It's just what I do, and this person is not necessarily the greatest copywriter that they think they are, but that's probably the most amusing part of it. But, you got to let people pound when they don't have any real substance to go on, they have to chest pound. That's just the way it goes. That's just how insecurity works. So anyway, back to the thing. So writing content, and when I say content, I mean not only books and stuff or info products, but it could be emails, it could be blog posts, it could be videos, it could be podcasting. It could be when you're speaking from the stage, if you are so inclined to do that sort of thing. It's all of this stuff. The things I'm going to go over in this episode are going to cover all that. And I dare say, Jonathan, this will be one of the most valuable episodes we ever do. Like, I could charge for this episode. That's how valuable
I want to give you credit before you get started, because I want to come clean about something, Ben. I haven't told you this, okay? And it's because I was ashamed and embarrassed. And, I didn't want you to disown me. But a couple months ago, I stopped writing daily emails. I stopped cold turkey and didn't write to my list for a while because I needed to do a change up, bro. But you know what? What you're saying right now about this habit that you help us create is true, because what you teach us for email works for making Facebook Lives, works for YouTube, works for anywhere, bro. So even though I didn't write daily emails, I still used email players methods to create content daily. So I'm testifying for you, brother.
Well, I sure appreciate that. My favorite anarchist and another podcasting expert, Nathan Frazier, said something similar. And I don't mind, by the way, I don't mind self-propping right now. I really don't. I have no shame doing this right now. He was telling me that he uses the email players methodology to get a lot of engagement, because that's what everybody wants on social media, on Facebook and all that. And, now just by the nature of what he teaches, he's a anarchist and all that, he probably gets a lot of attention anyway, but it's nice to know it works for that. And certainly the stuff we're going to talk about here works for all that. So that said, is there anything else, Jonathan? Any other testimonial you want to give me? Any more propping? I'll take all the props.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to keep it to one an episode before I turn into a fanboy.
Well, the transformation is slow and steady, but it's, I don't know if you ever watch, do you ever watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
You ever watch Game of Thrones? You know how that disease that like turns people into rock people?
Oh yeah, that nasty thing.
Yeah, that's kind of like, that's this podcast. Like we infect you the first time you hear it, and then it slowly takes over. Before you know it, you're saying, not only did I hate Ben, but now I agree with him, and now and they prop me up. So that's the way I look at it. I'm like that insidious disease in Game of Thrones that kills people. So how to write content that isn't boring, dull, and dry. The first thing that anybody should do with this, Jonathan, and this is so simple, it just blows my mind that nobody does this, is to talk about pain. Now, I've done a whole talk about like what I call it the villains talk, where I talk about each pain in someone's life is a different villain, like in a rogues gallery, like the Joker, the Penguin, the Scarecrow, Bane. These are all like part of Batman's rogues gallery. And each pain you just look at as a different villain, and you bring in a different villain for each email or whatever you're doing, social media, whatever you want to do, chapter in a book. You talk about a specific pain. And whether you want to solve that pain or not depends on the media you're using. Like in emails, I'm not going to solve all the pains. I'll simply talk about the pains and make it a very strong vision for people and then ask them to buy. But if it's in a book or something, that's fine too. Jonathan, I wrote an entire book on a bunch of dog tips, like dog training and health and all that many years ago. And all I did was go through like Google News. And I just looked up like all the problems dogs are having, like dogs that are dying in the car because, their stupid owners run inside during the summer and, start yapping away and they come back and their dog's dead. Like that was a problem. So I would just go through Google News. So that's one way to come up with really good content. And again, this spans the whole thing. You can never bore someone if you're talking about their pains. When nobody ever gets bored looking at their symptoms. That's why they sit there glued to freaking WebMD all day, and they think they're going to die because their toenail itches or something. So that's one way to do, is to focus on pains. Pain is your friend. Think of it as your pain pal account, as I like to tell people. Pain is good. Pain is good as long as you're the one not going through it. Obviously, it's not good for those who go through it. But, you talk about someone's pains, they're not going anywhere. They will give you all the attention, all the, whatever you want. They will give you money, whatever. If you can solve it, they'll throw it at you because you're the one talking about the pains. And that's one of the best ways to get engagement.
Dude, you know what that reminds me of? All the freaking pharmaceutical commercials, right? They're talking about, are you depressed? Yeah. Are you dying? And then the side effects are worse than your symptoms, but people are glued to those all the time.
Well, that's a very good point, Jonathan. That's a very good point. It's true that the care is worse than the disease. It's certainly like that in the prostate niche. I can tell you that much. When you hear about like TERP surgery and all this, you're like, what the hell? I'd rather get up 10 times a night than have to go through that. But so anyway, you remember me talking about TERP, probably in those prostate. You're still squirming.
Still hurts, right?
Still hurts thinking about. But that's how it works. And I remember when people read that sales letter, because I would let some people read the sales letter when I first wrote it, which was like in 2011 or 2010, actually. And like suddenly people who are like in their 20s are like, oh man, I think I got prostate problems. Like, dude, you do not have prostate problems. I just planted the idea in your head. And
yeah, I did that. I did that. I bought your product. I started taking Fotine, all that. I'm like, I just don't want that shit to happen to me. That's all.
Me neither. I mean, I'm the same way. So even like my Enoch Wars novels, I just write about stuff that freaks me out. So when I write about like these rapist grandmas and all like weird stuff like that, it's all because that's the stuff that freaks me out. So people read Enoch Wars and they go, what is going on in your mind? I'm just talking. This is the stuff that scares me, keeps me up at night. So, all right. So focus on pain. If you did nothing but write or create content around pains, you'll never have to worry about sales or quote engagement or any of that stuff ever again. And by the way, how many people you see do that, Jonathan? When they're up there with their little social media flakebook posts, they never talk about this pains. All they talk about is like, they yell at people, they swear a lot, and they do all that, but they never actually talk about the pains. They're trying to inspire everybody. And there's nothing wrong with inspiration. That's actually a good way to do it. But I say pain. Pain will beat all that. Pain trumps inspiration.
Yeah.
All right. So next thing to do. And again, this is very, very secret information I'm about to share here, Jonathan. Very secret. But you can create a lot of content just by telling stories.
Ta-da.
Stories are like basically like it's built in entertainment for one thing. You can say a lot without having to say a lot. So you can say a lot with less words, or if you're on a video with less talking, whatever. One story will do more will get a point across better than a lecture. One of my favorite examples, this is the great Michael Savage, the talk show. Now we've talked about Michael Savage, right?
Yeah.
Talked about Michael Savage. He's one of my influences for this podcast in some ways. And, I think he's one of the greatest communicators of our day. And I'm not just saying that because I agree with his politics. Even if he was a hardcore left-wing feminist, I would still think he's like the best communicator in the world. Because that's how he started out, Jonathan. I don't know if you know this or not, but he started out as a social worker.
Really?
When he first got out of college.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a social worker.
I remember.
Hardcore left, all that stuff. Like he was, that's what he said. He was as left as you can get. And then he was working as a social worker. So he would be giving people who were like on welfare and all this, like they would get free stuff. And he's sitting there in his apartment. Now he spent like 10 years in college and grad school combining all that. And he's sleeping on the floor. I didn't think he had a mattress, sleeping on the floor. He said he had 2 orange crates as his lampstands. He had like no furniture, nothing. And he just worked his ass off to like be able to work this job and all that. And he'd go to his boss and his boss would be like, well, these people on welfare, whatever, they can't be, it's inhumane for them not to have a couch. Make sure you get them a couch. Make sure you get them like all this stuff he doesn't have. And he said that turned him like, he goes, that's what did it. He goes, it just flipped everything on its head. And so you tell that story, it's kind of hard to like not understand where he's coming from because the story did all the persuasion.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do anything. So that's another one, telling stories, which, I don't have to go into any detail about how to tell stories. I mean, people know, if they don't know, I would recommend getting my Agora tapes. I'm going to do some shameless plugging.
All right, here we go.
My Agora tapes, product. I had Agora tape, agoratapes.com, which is a series of talks I did to Agora, to their copywriters and their editors and their content writers. And one of the things you get for free if you buy it, because I'm only selling the infotainment talk I gave, but as a bonus, you get the storytelling talk too. So that's in there. Moving on. If you're doing writing and you're doing content, and this wouldn't apply obviously to video because you're already doing this or podcasting, but write like you talk. Very easy to write. Like, people make writing so hard, Jonathan. They're trying to be perfect and all this. Just write like you talk. Just write like you talk. Nobody cares anymore. Nobody cares. Unless you're trying to get into like a mainstream publisher or something, nobody cares. Just write like you talk. I mean, don't write like, if you're a little dim-witted, I would recommend,
spice it up.
Not sound like a dimwit. In other words, if you're a Guru fanboy or something. But writing like you talk, very easy way to write content that's not dull and boring, unless your personality is dull and boring, then writing like you talk won't help. So nothing I can do with that. Here's another tip. Now, this tip helped me do a lot of writing, Jonathan. This tip helped me write 4 of my novels within like a 4 or 5 month period in 2016. And not that they're real long or anything, but still. And that is, I treat each chapter. Now, this would work for nonfiction or fiction. I don't want you to think this is just for novels. Just treat every chapter like it's an email you're writing to your list. I mean, you'd be amazed. Now, I learned, this isn't like some super secret tip either, but it's something I remember learning or hearing Ann Coulter talk about. And she puts a lot of content out. And tons of books. That girl just writes a book like, every year. And that's what she says. She just pretends she's writing an email to someone, whether trying to educate them or argue with them.
Nice.
And it's simple. It's like anybody can write an email. And before you know it, the chapter's done. Another thing you can do, and this goes back to the agoratapes.com, is to infotain people. Infotainment is simply when you merge information with entertainment. That's it. A lot of people try to use these stupid terms like cellucate and all this crap. What? Infotainment.
Cellucate.
Yeah, this cellucate is like the new one because people they're afraid of the word entertainment or something. But to me, entertainment is everything. Like if you don't put entertainment in everything you do nowadays, especially, nobody's even going to go. They're not even going to start reading. And it goes back to the Mel Gibson thing when he talked about how he makes his movies. First thing a movie has to do is entertain, or nobody's going to stick around. Nobody cares about your big theme and all this if they don't stick around because they're not entertained. Well, I think we're getting to this age now where everyone demands entertainment. So you have to be able to entertain people and mix it with information. And I like to think we do it on this podcast, Jonathan. That is for the listeners to decide. But that's what we try to do. Yeah, we try to do that. And finally, and this is a very simple thing, but a lot of people are too scared to do it, which is why if you do it, you'll stand out like, a fart in study halls, I like to say. Did I tell you that time? I tell you that story. Did I tell you that story?
I think you should tell the crowd.
In the spirit of infotainment, informing you and hopefully entertaining. If not, at least we're entertaining ourselves, Jonathan. When I was in 8th grade, I was sitting in study halls, a big study hall. It was really hot and everything. They didn't have air conditioning in there. This is back before any schools had air conditioning, at least our school. And they had these like wooden desks. Like you sat on like a wooden desk, like you're sitting on a piece of wood basically. And well, one thing led to another, and I'm just sitting there reading or something, and then bonk, like it just like, ricocheted across all the walls and everything. I mean, everyone heard it. Everyone started laughing. And in my ultimate evil, what I did, Jonathan, and I'm very ashamed of this to this day, is I turned around and looked at the guy behind me.
What else? He did that's what you have to do.
That was all I could think to do. I wasn't going to get laughed at. Better him than me. And,
ruined his life.
I think well, actually, he might have looked at the guy behind him too. So I don't think anyone like pinned it on anyone. But anyway, that stood out. Okay, that's how you get attention. That's not the best kind of attention, but you get some attention. And this last way of writing content will get you that kind of attention. In other words, the kind of attention that you may not want, but you will get attention nonetheless. And that is being controversial. And the more controversial you can be in your content, the more people will hate it and the more people will love it and the more both sides will buy it. If for no other reason, just to see how much more they can hate you. This is the whole secret of like talk radio, basically.
Bro, I love it.
And yeah. So those are the ways. I mean, there's many more ways, but those ways should be plenty on how to write content that is not boring, dull, and dry. And not just write content, but like you were saying, videos, whatever,
everything.
Podcast, video. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Anything. It could be just trying to persuade someone in your family to do something. These things will work. So that's all I got today. So next week, Jonathan, we're going to talk about what I call drunken marketing tips. Okay. And it doesn't mean you have to be drunk or anything, but when you understand where I'm coming from, it'll make that title will make sense, but not until we start, which is almost like a no-no when it comes to headlines, by the way. But we'll see what happens. So until next time, that's all I got.
So it was agoratapes.com or was it agoratapes.com?
It's agoratapes.com.
It is agoratapes.com.
Yeah, I call those talks the Agora tapes because they taped it. They taped my talk, even though they're not on tape.
Yeah.
They don't come on tape. And even if they did, nobody would be able to listen to it. But yeah, agoratapes.com.
All right. That's a wrap for another bensettle.com podcast. We'll be back with you next time.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To download yourself a free issue of Ben's prestigious $97 per month email players newsletter, which is going to show you 24 ways to write emails people eagerly read, click, and buy from, head on over to www.bensettle.com. Well, off you go. You know it makes sense.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.